So, what were the criticisms from the disabled community of Million Dollar Baby?
The criticisms with $1 Million Baby were that, one, the film is not accurate to the original text, which was a short story. In the short story, it shows a very realistic rehabilitation process where Maggie was with other paraplegics and quadriplegics. The second criticism people have is that it's not realistic at all to even the rehabilitation. In the movie $1 Million Baby, it shows her getting sores on her arms because she's not being moved. And that would never happen in a regular treatment facility. Treatment facilities, she would not be alone. She would have constant care. And thirdly, it's not a crime to even take someone off a ventilator. If she wanted to be off a ventilator, they probably would just give her a sedative and pull the plug. It's been, through Supreme Court rulings that people have the right to refuse treatment. The greater concern is that Clint Eastwood, before producing and directing this film, actually spoke on Capitol Hill against the ADA and wanted to have what was known as the ADA Notification Act. And actually, the thing with the ADA is, which is a big misconception, is that there's people make a lot of money off the ADA. Actually, there's no monetary damages that you can receive from the ADA. Certain states have monetary damages. I think California might be one of them, but there's no, you can't make money off of a lawsuit with the ADA.
There's a part in the film where someone on the panel mentions that the right wing they co-opted part of the protest.
Disability advocacy that attempted to criticize Clint Eastwood was immediately co-opted by the conservative right.
It was actually really strange because a lot of the activism around the film deals with euthanasia or assisted suicide in terms of that. And there's a large population of people with disabilities who are against assisted suicide. And those people were there from day one, looking at it. What happened is that Frank Rich of the New York Times wrote a piece, basically making Eastwood out to be, a martyr of the right wing. And it was weeks before the right wing ever jumped upon this, on this issue. It was also interesting that the Shivo case would be right after this as well. So there's parallels with that. Actually, it was really strange because Clint Eastwood's a very right-wing human being, and so to, have Frank Rich, who's a liberal journalist, supporting Clint Eastwood, and certainly I'm all for artistic freedom, but there are things that he did with that movie that were just not reasonable. I mean, you don't advocate the killing of people with disabilities, and the film itself is just so far from what the reality of it is that the only people that are actually, if you know a person with quadriplegia, you automatically just don't understand why this film would do this. It's just so far beyond what the reality is.
Who or what is behind the Right to Die movement?
The Right to Die movement was basically started in the late 60s by the Hemlock Society. And throughout the 80s and 90s, it became glorified by Jock Hockenberry. The thing that most people don't know about Jock Hockenberry is that most of the victims that he aided were not terminal and mostly female. A lot of people with MS. In the early 80s, there was a case called about Elizabeth Bouvier, who had who was a quadriplegic with CP, who asked for the right to die. It went around the court several times, and she, I believe, won the right to die, but that didn't. But she's still alive, and that became the cause celeb for the Hemlock Society. There have been others. There was Larry McAfee, a quadriplegic in Georgia, who was put into a nursing home. Actually, a wide variety of nursing homes. And and it wasn't the fact that he wanted to die; it's the fact that living in a nursing home wasn't really a great, way to live. He ended up getting, along with 4 or 5 other people who were all quadriplegics, and developing their own housing system, and they had their own PCAs. And he ended up living quite a while. But the Hemlock Society has passed voter initiatives, one in Oregon, that does allow legalized assisted suicide. Basically, once you allow assisted suicide, you give someone a really cheap way to end their life. It's a lot cheaper than paying for someone to have personal assistance to get up or feed themselves every morning or every day, or be on expensive medications. So I think it's not just a moral issue. I think it's a civil rights issue. I mean, why are you allowing people with disabilities to have terminal illnesses? Why not people with mental disabilities? Why not people who are younger and don't want to go through the pain? It's a very it doesn't make a lot of sense logically. And in our society, we always try and stop someone who is suicidal. Then why is it okay for someone who has a disability who is suicidal? There's all these double standards that just don't make sense.
And I thank all of you for all that you've done to raise awareness and bring attention to the silent struggles that are faced by so many.
So who's the speaker at the end of your film?
That's Jock Hockenberry. He's a former Dateline correspondent, and he also now currently writes a blog at johnhockenberry.com, as well as he's the associate editor of Wired magazine and Metropolis magazine. He's been paraplegic since he was 19. He has 4 wonderful kids. He's had an off-Broadway play called Spokesman that ran in 1996. He's done it all. He's a really great advocate for people with disabilities.
And you included a story of his at the end of your film that I found to be, a really memorable story that stuck with me after I saw the film. I was curious why you decided to include that at the very close of the film.
I knew right when I saw that it was being videotaped, and I knew that would be the minute I said that's exactly what I was trying to show, is that being disabled is not different or bad or worse. It just is. And I loved the moment at the end of it. I thought it was really great. It was really helpful because he really did do it a lot, and it just sort of picked up from where his essay left off. It was really good.
I mean, if you're a dad, and you're in a wheelchair, I mean, you do stuff. You ride your kid. I mean, you're kind of like a daddy in a stroller, at the same time. It's part daddy, part stroller. I mean, the kids are in your lap. I mean, they're kind of sort of all over you. And from a kid's perspective, a wheelchair is really cool. And so my kids understand that, and they carry this sensibility into their first grade. And of course, my daughters and I do these kind of strange acrobatics. One of our more famous maneuvers is I get up on 2 wheels like this, and one of my daughters, will stand on my toes, and I'm just with 2 fingers hold on to my knees, and we do this kind of, I balance, and then they let go, and we got this whole, hammy kind of thing worked out. And one day in their first grade class, I did this with my daughter Olivia, who's quite tall, and being 6 now, it's getting a little hard to do the balancing act thing. And I did it in the middle of class, and all the other first graders are just, oh, that's totally awesome. Oh my goodness. And Elon, who's this great little kid, who He's half Israeli, and I speak Hebrew with him. I spent some time in the Middle East, so we already had this kind of bond. He saw that and he went, I have to do that. I have to do that. And I said, well, no, actually, Elon, it's probably not a good idea. My daughters, know how to do this. They've been doing it for years, and we're in a school, and I'm in the middle of a first grade, and putting like someone else's kid on my feet and doing like sort of balancing. I said, this will make the teachers really nervous, Elon. I come back the next day. He asked me to do the same thing, and I say, no, Elon, I explained to you that this is not really a good idea. The people in class are not going to go along with this. The school administrators are going to be really upset if I try to do acrobatics with you, not my child in the middle of school property. I didn't explain about insurance and lawyers and all that stuff that he's going to learn about soon enough. And Elon's response was, I'll cover for you. And I had to explain to Elon that, oh my God, in this world that he's growing up in, he's going to learn that, like, adults who let first graders cover for them, not a good outcome. No, Elon, it doesn't work that way. And so after like 10 days, every single day of explaining to him, I said, Elon, one of these days, I'll take you outside, we'll go out onto the sidewalk, we'll do the acrobatics thing. It's gonna have to be a nice day. When the weather is nice, we'll do it. But I'm not doing it right now, and you can't stand on my feet because it makes your teachers really nervous. And Elon he'd had it. He stepped down off my feet, looked me straight in the eye and said, I wish my dad was in a wheelchair.
Oh. Yes!
Now we're getting somewhere. Thank you very much.